Okay, so this will be the last video that I have for this year. It will be going over the test, the answers to the test that you took last week for the end of Module 5 assessment. On Thursday, you will just have some sprints to do. It's just some fluency practice, and then that will be it for the year. You may have noticed on this test that up at the top here, I put this page is worth 17 points. And that's just to let you know that there are some points on here where you'll have to do stuff that's not filling those green boxes. Because if you look up here, this says 15 points, but it's really worth 17. So that means that 2 of the points you earn on this page are something you're going to have to actually fill in yourself. So number 1, draw a number bond for the fractional unit. So I did the number bond for you, but you had to fill in the fractional unit. So this would be 1 out of 6 units. And remember, if it's big like that and that bothers you, you can just come up here and hit that T- button, and that makes the text smaller. And then same thing, this one will be 1/6. 1/6. 1/6. 1/6. And 1/6. So that's saying that if we have this number bond of 1 whole, we have 6 pieces, each of them is 1/6, and together they come to make 1 whole. Now B says partition or divide the fraction strip into 6. So you'll see there's a number line down here and a fraction strip up here. We need to partition the fraction strip. So this is where one of those points is going to come from. I'm just going to do the pen function. You can do the line one if it's easier for you. And I'm going to split it in half and then into thirds. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So I partitioned the fraction strip into 6. C says label the fractions on the number line. So if you look, I put the boxes below the number line, and you just have to label them. So we know that it's broken into 6, so the denominator, or that number on bottom, is going to be 6. Right now we have 0 out of 6, which is 0, 6. And then we have 1/6. And then, like we've been doing, you're just going to keep counting up. 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, and 6/6. And really, mostly what we're showing with problem number 1 is that there's many different ways to show these fractions. So we have a number bond, we have a fraction strip, and we have a number line, and they're all showing 6. So we move to number 2. Estimate to label 3/5 on the number line. So this is another one of those that you got a point for doing it yourself. So I'm just going to take the pen and I'm going to break this number line, or this fraction strip, into 5 equal pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it says I have to label 3/5. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. So this line here shows where 3/5 is. So I'm going to move the line down here on the number line. And that is 3/5. Okay, so I used the fraction strip to help myself label the number line where 3/5 would go, and that was worth 1 point. B, draw a number bond to match your number line. So if you look at the fraction strip down here, there's this piece, and then there's this piece. So it's kind of like 2 pieces. The first piece goes from 0 to 3/5. So in my number bond, I'm going to do 3/5. The other side is 2 pieces. So that would be 2 out of the 5 pieces, which is 2/5. So if we put the 3/5 and the 2/5 together, we have 1 whole. And so that's what our number bond shows. So just like number 1 showed a number bond, a fraction strip, and a number line, number 2 has the same thing. Down here we have our number bond, our fraction strip, and then our number line. The only thing different about our number bond here is that we broke it into 2 pieces. So for example, if I were to shade these first 3 pieces, or if I were to say that this was shaded, then it would be like saying this is shaded versus unshaded, okay? So it's just breaking it up into those 2 groups or 2 pieces. Number 3. Now, this page says it is worth 13 points, and if you'll notice up here, it says 13 points. So that means every point you earn on this page is something that's going to be filled in one of the green boxes. 3A, partition the line into fifths, which I did for you. I broke it into fifths. And label the fractions on the number line. Hint, notice the number line is between the numbers 2 and 3. So what we need to do is figure out what is going to start here, and then we can count up. Well, what I can do is I can draw a picture. If I have 2 shapes, right, because I need 2, and I break them into fifths, that means they have 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, how many pieces do I have? This one has 5, and this one has 5. So that's kind of like our multiplication. 2 groups of 5 equals 10. So that means that 2 wholes will really be the same as 10 pieces broken into fifths. So in my blank here, I'm going to put 10 fifths. And then I just start counting up, because the next line I'll have 11 fifths. And then I'll have 12 fifths. And then 13 fifths. 14 fifths. And 15 fifths. And now we know 15 fifths is right. If you use your multiplication trick that we used over here, we have 3 wholes, which is the same as 3 groups of 5, and 3 times 5 is 15. C says label the wholes 2 and 3 as fractions, which we did right here for 2 wholes and here for 3 wholes. Number 4, label the following numbers on the number line. So first it has 7/3. Well, I can either just count, or I can go ahead and label. That's really up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and label all the fractions. So I know this starts at 0, and it's broken into thirds, right? 1, 2, 3 pieces to get to 1 whole. So this one is 0 thirds, 1 third, 2 thirds, 3 thirds. I'm just counting up. 4 thirds, 5 thirds, 6 thirds, 7 thirds, 8 thirds, 9 thirds. So I just went ahead and labeled it. You did not have to do that. That's up to you. But now I can see, at first I have to put 7 thirds somewhere. Well, I can find where I wrote 7 thirds and just put 7 thirds. Next was 2 thirds. Well, here's where I had 2 thirds.
Mom,
2 thirds.
can I have a popsicle?
Next is 4 thirds, and right here is where I labeled 4 thirds, so I know it goes in that blank, 4 thirds. Number 5, place 3/5 and 1/5 on the number line. Well, I can do the same thing. I can label the number line, or I can just place them. Here I know is 0 fifths. The first one is going to be 1/5. This would be 2 fifths, and then this would be 3 fifths. If we kept going, we'd have 4 fifths and 5 fifths. Now it's asking for B, which fraction is closest to 0, 3/5 or 1/5? Well, if you look at the 0, what fraction is closest? Right next to it is 1/5. And that just means that 1/5 is smaller than 3/5 because it's closer to 0. So when it says compare using greater than, less than, or equal to, 3/5 is greater than 1/5. The 3/5 is bigger, it's closer to 1. 1/5 is closer to 0. So we're going to use the greater than symbol. And remember, that's the alligator eating the bigger number, which is 3/5. Number 6, you'll notice it says this page is worth 12 points, but over here it says 11. That means that one of the points is something that you will have to do on your own. Number 6, divide the line into fourths. So I went ahead and divided the number line for you, so we'll move on. Place the fractions 2/4, 10/4, and 7/4 on the number line. So let's start at 0. We're trying to get to 2/4, so we'll go 1, 2. Right here is going to be 2/4. Next it says 10/4, so I'm just going to start at where I know 2 is and keep going till I get to 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's my 10/4. And then next is 7/4, so I'm going to go back to 2 and count up till I get to 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's 7/4. Now it says D, write each whole, 0, 1, 2, and 3 as a fraction. So here at 0, we know we just have 0, but the line is divided into fourths, so it's considered 0/4. And then we can just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 4/4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8/4, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's 12/4. So that's why I said on the other page, sometimes what you want to do is before you place fractions, sometimes you just want to go through and you can just label them. So if I would have gone through and just labeled 0/4, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and so on, then I wouldn't have had to go back and do all that counting because I could just see where I labeled it and then put the answer in there. So 2 ways to do that. It's up to you. Number 7, label what fraction of the figure is shaded. So for this one, there's 1, 2, 3 pieces shaded out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3/5 shaded. Over here, still 3 pieces shaded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 5. Same fraction, 3/5. What you notice is that even though those both represent the same fraction, the shape is different. So you can have the same fraction in different shapes. 2 pieces shaded here out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2/5, and over here, once again, 3 pieces shaded out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So even though the squares were the same size, 3 of those fractions ended up being 3/5. So it doesn't matter where you move the squares to, as long as the shaded amount stays the same. So that was just kind of what number 7 was showing, that you can have the same fraction represented in different ways depending on what your shape looks like. Number 8, Claire went home after school and told her mother that 1 whole is the same as 2 halves and 6 sixths. Her mother asked why, but Claire couldn't explain. Use number lines to help Claire show her mother why 1 equals 2 halves equals 6 sixths. So this is where you got that extra point from, that 12th point, is you just had to show me number lines. So it said using number lines, so I'm going to do a number line. And what I'm going to do is first I'm going to show 2 halves. So I'm going to have 0 and 1. I'm going to break it in half. So now I have 2 equal pieces. Okay. 1 piece, 2 pieces. Well, this first piece is 0 halves, 1 half, 2 halves. Okay. So we can see that the 2 halves line is the same as the 1 whole line. So we know 1 whole is equal to 2 halves. Well, now we have to prove it for sixths. So I'm going to do a number line that is the same length, starts at 0, and ends at 1. Now I'm going to break it into 6 equal pieces. And I'll label those pieces. So this one is 0 6, 1 6, 2 6, 3 6, 4 6, 5 6, and the last line is 6 6. And once again, 6 6 lines up with 1 whole. So 6 6 is the same as 1 whole. So we know that 1 whole is the same as 2 halves, which is also the same as 6 sixths. And we just proved that using number lines because all of those fractions line up at that 1 whole line. So they're all worth the same amount. And we also know that just because we know that if the top number and the bottom number are the same, then that means it's 1 whole. But that's just a little trick that we learned for ourselves. All right. So this is the last page. It says this page is worth 3 points. You'll notice over here it only says 1, so that means that 2 of those points are things that you had to do on your own on the page. Additionally, there is up to 3 points in extra credit. So as long as you did the extra credit problem, you got up to 3 points that went towards your test to give yourself a better grade. Number 9, draw and label 2 models that show equivalent or equal fractions. So this was kind of left up to you to choose whatever fraction you wanted, and you had to draw and label it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do, and it can be shapes, it can be number lines, it can be number bonds, whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to have a rectangle and a triangle, and I'm going to break each of them into 2 equal pieces. This one's looking a little rough. Okay, so I drew my 2. Both of them are broken into 2 equal pieces, but now I need to label it. So this is 1 piece out of 2. This is 1 piece out of 2. This is 1 piece out of 2, and this is 1 piece out of 2. So each of them represents 1 half. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade 1 half. So now I can say that 1 half on this triangle is shaded and 1 half of this rectangle is shaded. Okay? So really what we're getting at with that is that they're both represent 1 half. Let me see if I can get a different color. This 1 half is equal to this 1 half, and this 1 half is equal to this 1 half. So it's 2 different models showing equivalent fractions. Now you could have also done it another way if you wanted to draw a number line and break it in half, and you label this as 0 halves, 1 half, 2 halves, and you could say that that is equivalent to this number bond and you break the number bond into 1/2 and 1/2. Okay, and then you could say that this half is equal to this half. Okay, however you wanted to represent it, as long as you were showing equivalent fractions and you both drew and labeled, then that was worth up to 2 points. All right, so let's go ahead to number 10. I'm just going to erase this so we can see. Henry and Maddie were in a pie eating contest. The pies were cut into thirds or sixths. Henry picked up a pie cut into sixths and ate 4/6 of it. Maddie picked up a pie cut into thirds. What fraction of her pie does Maddie have to eat to tie with Henry? Hint, draw a number line or picture to help and solve. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go back and take this one step at a time. The pies were cut into thirds or sixths. Henry picked up a pie cut into sixths. So I'm going to make Henry's pie. I'm going to do H for Henry. His pie was broken into sixths. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He ate 4/6 of it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maddie picked up a pie cut into thirds. So here's Maddie's pie. Okay. Maddie's pie is cut into thirds. We have to figure out how many of her pie pieces does she have to eat to be the same as Henry. So I'm going to look at his. And you notice that if we shade that amount, it looks like the same as Henry's. So right now, Henry has eaten 4/6. Maddie has eaten 2 out of 3 pieces. And we can check our work, because actually if I extend this line, and this line, and this line, if we were to cut all of those pieces into all of Maddie's pieces in half, then we would end up with 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll notice that that 2/3 that we shaded is the same as 4/6. So we know that we did that correctly, and that's just kind of a way to check our work. So Maddie has to eat 2/3 of her pie. Now, this one might have been a little bit harder, especially because we don't draw circles as much when we're dividing fractions, just because it's a little bit harder. So I am going to show you what it would look like on the number line as well, if that was the way you chose to do it. So Henry's is broken into 6. We're going to do H for Henry. Okay, so 0, 6, 1, 6, 2, 6, 3, 6, 4, 6, kind of running out of space, but you get the gist. 5, 6, and 6, 6. And he ate 4/6, so he ate up to this line here. Now Maddie's pie is broken into thirds. So here's 0/3, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3. Well, we had to figure out what do we need to shade to get to the same spot as we did on Henry's, and we had to shade up to the 2/3 line. So that's also where we got that 2/3. So 2 different ways to do it. Here's a picture, here's a number line. That brings us to the last problem, number 11. Extra credit. Make up your own math problem and solve. It must be a problem involving fractions. So what you can do is you can hit the text box and you can just type out your problem. And then you can use the pen to draw the picture. Or if you want, you can use the pen to write the problem. It's just a little bit harder. if you don't have a touch screen. And then make sure you just make up the problem and solve it. And if you make up a problem and solve it with fractions, that's 3 points. And that is all I have for you. So remember, after you watch the video, if you want to go back in and change your answers for a better grade, you can. And just let me know when you have that finished. And that is it.